Masechet Sanhedrin, Daf Mem Gimel. On the previous daf, we learned a baraita that teaches that the place of execution is outside of all three encampments, meaning not where the Ohel Moed is, you can't do it there, not where the Levim are, not where the Yisrael was, but rather outside all three encampments. The parallel and later on, when there's a Bet HaMikdash, is not in the Bet HaMikdash courtyard itself, and that's the first. Not on Har HaBayit would be equivalent to Liviyah, and that not in Jerusalem, that would be where Yisrael is, but rather outside of the walls of Jerusalem. Okay, that's where the execution happens, even though the Bet Din, the Sanhedrin HaGadol, is within one of the chambers in the courtyard itself. So even if the verdict is given there, he's taken outside to be killed. And then the question was, how do we know this? We already saw one derivation, and the derivation is based on a gezerah shava. On the one hand, regarding the blasphemer, it says, Hoseh et hamkalel el michus lamachaneh. He's taken outside of the encampment. So we don't know how many encampments he's taken out of. But it says in several other places also the same phrase, michus lamachaneh, specifically regarding the Pad HaChatat Shel Kohen Gadol, and also the Pad Chatat of Esibur. It says that these animals are burnt outside. And so we learned, based on comparing all of these words, that, and also with the ashes, are taken outside. So by combining all of these same phrases and the repetition of them, we learned already that we have to go outside of all three encampments. Okay, that was all one derivation, and now we're going to have a second and then a third derivation right now. Rav Papa Amar Moshe Hecha Havayati b'machane Leviyah. Where was Moshe sitting? He's a Levi, so he is encamped in the section of the Leviim, which is the second encampment. So presumably that's where he's doing the judgment. Ve'amar leRachamana Hoseh et hamkalel el mechus lamachaneh. And then when the blasphemer came and to trial, Hashem told Moshe in the pasuk that we just read in Vayikra, take the blasphemer outside of the encampment. So that's going to mean outside of Machane Leviyah. So that's at least outside the first two, the inner two. And later on in that same chapter, it says they took the blasphemer outside of the encampment. So that means another outside. That pasuk is at the end, right? This pasuk was 14. Remember, this word el is going to come up in a second. And the very last pasuk says, Moshe told Bnei Israel what the verdict was. And they did exactly what Hashem told Moshe to do, what Moshe told them to do. And they stoned him with a stone. Avin, notices in plural. Bnei Israel fulfilled what Hashem said. We're going to analyze all the parts of this pasuk. And so, since it said before, Hashem said, take him out, and here it says, Vayosiu el mechus hamachaneh, take him outside. So that means he was in the Levi camp. Outside means Israel. Outside again, or in this pasuk, means outside all of them. Okay, good. So now we have a source for why it's outside all three. But here's the challenge. No, that pasuk at the end of the chapter, we need that to say that they fulfilled what Moshe said. It's an exact parallel. Moshe said, take them out, and here they're taking them out. Doesn't mean they took them out twice. This is just the fulfillment of what Moshe said. No, we don't need this part of the pasuk, we don't need that to teach us that they fulfilled what Moshe said, because at the end of the pasuk it already says, so I know that they did that. Moshe told them, take him out, as Hashem told Moshe, so they did it. So you don't have to say that they took him out. Obviously, that's part of the instructions, and they also did that. Therefore, this part of the pasuk is actually extra. If it's extra, what is it teaching us? That they took the blasphemer out of two camps, meaning out of all three camps, because they started in the second camp out of the third, and then out of that one, out of the second and out of the third, so that means out of all three camps. If so, that Asuk Moshe means that they fulfilled everything that Moshe said, that everything that Hashem told Moshe, then why does the pasuk have to go out of its way to say that they stoned him with a stone? It already said before that Hashem told Moshe that they should. It's important to read this pasuk also. Take him out of the machaneh, v'samechu kol Hashem et yemedhem al rosho, v'ragemu oto kol ha'eda. They do semicha. All the people there put their hands on his head, basically saying this person is guilty and he will be killed because of the sin that he did, and they stoned him. So it already says over here that Hashem told Moshe that they should stone him, and then it says they fulfilled everything that Hashem told Moshe, so that would include stoning. So why does it have to say later on that they actually fulfilled the stoning part? And the answer to that is, we need that for the Baraita that says they stoned him ba'avin. Now actually the pasuk does not say ba'avin. If you look here, it says avin. No bet here, and the Gemara quotes it with a bet. What's going on here? Let's check the manuscripts, and if you see here, it says ba'avin. The first top lines are the printed editions, and so they have Avin. But the next four lines are all all manuscript editions, and you see the manuscript editions say Avin without the bet. So the bet is a printing error that was introduced by the first printer in Sansino, and then that was copied by Daniel Bomberg in Venice, and that was copied by the Vilna printing, but none of the manuscripts have the bet. So that's just a printing typo, is not a mistake in the Gemara itself. Okay, so anyway, the Baraita quotes this pasuk and says, why do we need this pasuk? It's answering the question. We already know that they fulfilled everything that Moshe told them, including stoning. So we learn oto, we stone him himself, but not his clothing, so that when stoning is done, it's done without the victim's clothing on. You could have like a loincloth just to cover his privates. But the point is that the stone should affect his skin itself and not have padding of having clothing on. It's also extra shameful to be naked or almost naked during this time of punishment. Okay, so that's what we learned. Oto, him himself, and not the clothing. And the word avin means that if he dies with one stone, they fulfilled their obligation. They don't have to stone him with many stones. It's not like sometimes you see in the movies, everybody's taking a little rock or a little pebble and pelting him. But rather, the way it was done is, actually first they would push him off a 2-story building, and then they would take one big stone and drop it on him. The idea was that would be a quicker and easier death than being pelted for 10 minutes by little stones. To have one big stone, I guess maybe crush his skull, or if he didn't already fall on it when he fell off the building. And so this would be actually supposed to be merciful, to give him a quick death. So that's all you have to do. You don't have to give him many stones. One is enough if it does the trick. Ve'istirich lemichtav aven, ve'istirich lemichtav avanim. The Baraita continues and explains that we need the word aven here regarding the blasphemer, and there's another context of stoning, which is the person who was gathering wood on Shabbat. He was also stoned, and there it says they stoned him with stones, plural. So we have the singular here that we already explained, that we use only one stone. So how come in the other context of stoning, the Shabbat violator, it says plural? Because if I only had the context of the blasphemer where it says one stone, I would have thought we take one big stone, we drop it on him, and if he doesn't die from one stone, then we don't bring any more. That's it. Well, he didn't die. Okay, so we weren't able to kill him, but you don't bring any more. We would have thought. So therefore, that's why in the case of the wood gatherer says many stones, that if he doesn't die from the first stone, you would bring more stones and you finish off the job. But if we only had the case of this wood gatherer, and where it says plural, then I would have thought that at the outset, we bring 2 or more stones, we bring many stones, and we just throw them all at him at the same time. And therefore, here in the blasphemer it says 1 stone, so from the combination of them, we learn that first we throw 1 big stone, and only then, if he doesn't die, then we bring more stones. Okay, so that's the end of Rav Papa's proof. Now we have a question. Hold on, we had a braita earlier from the first proof that quoted Pisukim and showed it through a Gezer HaShava. You read Michus HaMachaneh here regarding the blasphemer, Michus HaMachaneh in the other cases of the sacrifices, of the pod, this pod and that pod, and the deshen, and through that Gezer HaShava, we have a proof already. So why is Rav Papa coming and giving another one? And the answer is Ilu lo ne'emar ka'amar hachi ka'amar Ilu lo ne'emar kera hayiti omer Gezer HaShava achshav she'ne'emar kera Gezer HaShava la sarich. The answer is actually quite bold. We explained that the author of that braita was speaking in a style of if it were not said. And this is what he actually meant to say. If it were not said more explicitly in the pasuk, and Rav Papa's explanation is more explicit in the pasuk, because it says that Hashem told Moshe to take them out. So that's 1 going out from the Levi to Yisrael. And then it says they actually took him out, but we don't need that pasuk for the accomplishment, the fulfillment of it, because it already says they did whatever Moshe said. So that's an extra pasuk. So they're right there, right from within this context of the blasphemer, we can learn the whole law, and we don't have to go and make comparisons to the part of the Kohen Gadol and the part of the community and all that. So it's easier to say it right here. So what that Tanav, the Braita that made the Gezer HaShava, what he was saying is, if it had not been said in this local context here, as Rav Papa said, then I could have proven it from a Gezer HaShava. But now that we know it can be proven from the context of the blasphemer itself, we don't need the Gezer HaShava. So in other words, we're saying that Rav Papa is saying the real answer. And that Baraita was assuming that you knew Rav Papa and was saying, listen, just in case. Of course, Rav Papa is the real answer, but just in case we can have a Gezer HaShava. So this is very bold because the Baraita is from the times of the Tanaim. It's much older, and it gives us answer, Gezer HaShava, which we find all the time in Midrash Halacha, is always giving a Gezer HaShava. Rav Papa comes up with a brilliant alternative. But in order to reconcile them, we don't say, well, the Baraita is right, that's from the Tanaim. But Papa, how can you come and say something new? We actually say, the Gemara here says the opposite, that even the Tana of that Baraita said, yeah, Rav Papa, if I knew that, yeah, that's a good answer. Just if without that, I could have a backup proof just in case you need it. But you know what? Rav Papa has a better answer. That's what we're reading back into the wording of the actual Tanah. So that's quite bold and amazing. Rav Ashi, now we have a third derivation, that the place of execution is outside all the camps. Amar, Moshe hecha havayati v'achaneh Levi. Starts off the same as with Rav Papa. Moshe is in the encampment of the Leviim, the second encampment. V'amar le'rachamana oseh et hamkalel chus ha'machaneh Levi el michus ha'machaneh chus ha'machaneh Yisrael v'yoseh et hamkalel la'asiyah. So there's actually a double phrase when Hashem tells Moshe to take him out. It says hoseh hamkalel. Just that those 3 words itself, I would know. He goes out of the Levite camp to the Israel camp. And then actually says, El michus ha'machaneh. There's an extra word. Not just Hoseh et hamkalel. It says, Hoseh hamkalel, El michus ha'machaneh. Now you don't need that. You could just say, take him out. Well, take him out, right? Obviously, doesn't that mean take him out of the area where the Leviim are? So El michus ha'machaneh says, and yet one more step, keep going. Outside of all 3 encampments. So I know all that. Now the pasuk at the end that says they actually took him out, that we can say is for the fulfillment. And so we don't need to learn it from that pasuk as Rav Papa did, but rather that pasuk can be according to Peshat. That's just the fulfillment of what Hashem told Moshe to do. Now we ask, Asiya behedjaketi behu b'nei Yisrael asu kasher tziva Adonai et Moshe. But we don't need a pasuk to say the fulfillment. of the commandment to take them out, because it already says that Bnei Yisrael fulfilled whatever Hashem told Moshe. And the answer is, oh, indeed, we know that they fulfilled taking him out of the encampment from the pasuk that says at the end they took him out of the encampment. The pasuk that says they did everything that Hashem told Moshe, that's coming to include the other points that Hashem said to Moshe that it doesn't say explicitly at the end of the parasha. One is that they all put their hands upon the head of the condemned person, semicha. Interestingly, the only two types of people that get semicha are convicts on death row and rabbis. I'll let you figure out what the similarity might be. Anyway, that doesn't say at the end that they did the semicha, so we need this pasuk to say, and they did the semicha. And the other is for pushing the person off of a building. Doesn't say that they did that either, and so we learn from Kasha Siva that they did that because they were told to, and so that's why we need that pasuk. And now the rabbis challenge Rav Asher, and they say, according to you learned in a very simple way, which is really nice, just from one pasuk where it says, Hotziatam Kalel, from those three words, that means he took him out from Levi to Israel. El Michus HaMachaneh, the next three words, you learn from there that they kicked him out from Israel outside all three encampments. It's very nice that you learned everything just from one pasuk, but according to that, what are you going to do with the similar phrase, double phrase, that it says regarding the parim that are burnt, right? Because over there also, it says, Hotziat Apar El Michus HaMachaneh. And so here you have one phrase and two phrases, which means even without the Gezerah Shavah, comparing this one over here, the community one, as you did the first one for the Kohen Gadol, and all the Gezerot Shavot that we saw in the Baraita above, now you have too many phrases, right? Why would we need so many phrases to say, take it out, when the Gezerah Shavah worked by treating the all 6 words as one. But now if you learn 2 things from each of the 6 words, and it says it here, and it says it another place, and it says it regarding the Deshen, and all that, what are you going to learn from all these extra words? Kashya, and we leave that as a question against Rav Asher. In the way his answer is too simple, it's too easy, but then it raises problems somewhere else. Okay, Echad Omed. The Mishnah teaches that there'll be someone that stands in front of the court, and he's holding a cloth, and that way if anybody comes and says, oh, I have an argument for innocence, then he can wave it, and there's someone that's far away, as far as you can see, on a horse, and he will go and stop the execution and say, wait, there's potentially a new argument, bring him back to court. Amar Rav Huna, Peshita li, echad eben sheniskal ba, vechad ayas shenitla bo, vechad saif sheneherag bo, vechad sudar shenehanak bo, kulan mishel sibur. Rav Huna says, it's simple to me that the question is who buys the materials for the execution. So the stone that we use for stoning, and the piece of wood that we use, the pole that we use for hanging, and the sword that we use for beheading, and the handkerchief that we use for strangulation. They take 2 handkerchiefs and they pull it both ways and strangulate him. All those are from communal funds, because that's in the communal interest, right? It's the community's responsibility to punish people with capital punishment, so they have to come up with the money. And what's the reason? Besides what I just said, that's the communal responsibility. Furthermore, we're not going to ask the convict himself, hey, why don't you go, we condemn you to death. Oh, you also have to pay for it. That's too much, right? Can you go home, by the way, and bring a sword if you have one, because we need to cut your head off, and you should really pay for it. No, we don't tell him to do that. It's interesting because the Romans later on would make people carry their own cross before they would kill them on the cross. So that one was simple, but the question Rav Huna has is, what about this cloth that they wave in order to to get the attention of the guy on the horse, and the horse itself that's going to race and stop the execution? Who pays for those 2 items? You could say on the one hand, since they're meant to save the convict, so it's in the convict's interest to buy it, get a nice bright orange, big cloth, and get a really fast horse. So he should pay for it because it saves him. Or maybe you say it's the responsibility of the court to save him if at all possible. V'itzilu ha'eda, the pasuk says, and therefore the court has to pay for it because it's their responsibility not to kill an innocent person, and so they have to provide it. V'tu hada amar Rav Chiya bar Rav Asher amar Rav Chisda hayoseh lehareg mashkin oto koret shel lebona bechos shel yain kedeh shetitaref da'ato shene'emar tenu shechal obed v'yain lemareh nafesh. Now we're not going to answer this question, but we have a further question about what Rav Chiya, the son of Rav Asher, said in the name of Rav Chisda, that someone who is condemned to die, and he's going out to execution, we give him a grain, a little piece of frankincense, here's frankincense over here, inside a cup of wine. We intoxicate him so that his mind will be more calm or confused, and he's a little drunk, and that way it will dull the pain of the execution and the anxiety and worry about the execution that's about to happen. So we give him something intoxicating. The wine, and with the addition of the frankincense, will make him drunk. As the pasuk says in Mishleh, give a strong drink to him that is ready to perish, and wine to the bitter in soul. And he is about to perish, so he deserves a cup of wine. Incidentally, some think that the custom nowadays, before we say Kiddush or Havdalah, and before we're about to say Borei Pri HaGefen, we say Savrei Maranan, right? My teachers, what do you think? And they say Lechaim. The point is that sometimes when people drink wine, it's because they're about to get the death penalty. So now that we're about to drink the wine, say, what do you think? Right? My rabbis here, my teachers, about to drink. Is this because I'm about to get the death penalty? And that's where everybody answers, no, lechaim. This is for life. And then we go ahead and drink it with joy. Okay, V'tanya, nashim yekarot sheb'Yerushalayim hayu mitnadebot u'mebi'ot otan. Lo hitnadebu nashim yekarot mishel mi. So here's the question. There's a braita that says that the rich woman in Jerusalem would donate this drink. Whenever someone was about to get capital punishment, they would get together. Maybe they couldn't stand to hear the cries of this person who's being condemned, and so they wanted to give him a break, even though he deserves the death penalty. He's getting the death penalty, but still, they would donate the frankincense and the wine. Now here's the question. What if they didn't donate it? They weren't around, and they didn't donate it, so who pays for it? So this for sure, it makes sense that the community should raise funds for it, because the pasuk says tenu, give it to him, not take it from him, from his own money, but rather that's a sign of our collective mercy, that we should help dull his pain. It's bad enough that he's getting the death penalty, right? It's enough. He's paying his price for his crime, but he can get a cup of wine. Question that Ravacha bar Huna asked Rav Sheshat. What if one of the students in one of the rows, we said during the beginning of the deliberation, we invite them all to come and offer an argument for innocence. So one says, I have an argument for innocence. Okay, good. So come up. And then immediately before he gets a chance to explain his argument, he becomes a mute, right? The same thing would be if he would die or is kidnapped. For whatever reason, he's not able to express his argument. What do we do with that? Should we count it as if he said it, or discount it, or just wait till it gets better? What are we going to do? Menapeach Rav Sheshat bideh nishtatek. So Rav Sheshat's answer, he just waved his hand, dismissing it. What kind of question is that? What do you mean? He became a mute? If you're going to worry about this student that said, I have an argument, and then became mute, then you might have to worry about anyone. Maybe there's someone at the other end of the edge of the world that has an argument. So let's sit here and wait. Maybe somebody will come from 5,000 miles away, and he'll come and say, I have an argument. So who knows? So it's the same thing. Someone that's here and is mute is the same thing as someone who's not here at all. And so we just ignore. We don't assume that there's someone that knows an argument. So a student who's mute, we assume that we don't think that he has an argument, and therefore we just ignore it and we continue with the normal deliberation. And the answer to that is no, it's not the same. Hatam lo ka'amad, hacha ka'amad. No, in the case of someone that we don't even know, it's in some other country, they didn't say anything. They didn't write a letter and to say, I have an argument. Right? We just don't know about them at all. So we ignore. It is possible that there's someone outside the courtroom, somewhere else, that might come up with an argument, but they're not here, so we can't take them into account. But here, this student says, I have an argument. So he had something in mind. And he's one of the students. He's not a random person. He's in one of these rows. And so here, if he said, I have an argument, maybe we have to worry that this is a good argument and we can't just go on and ignore it. So what's the answer? And here's the answer. Tashema. Tamar Rabbi Yosef bar Chanina. Echad מהתלמידים שזיכה והמת, רואים אותו כאילו חי ועומד במקומו. We learned already that Rabbi Yosef bar Hanina says if one of the students said an argument for merit, and it was an acceptable argument, and then he died. Remember, we invite them up, and they become one of the judges. So when it comes time to vote, we consider it as if that student is alive and standing and remaining in his position, continuing to say innocence, and we count his vote, even though he's dead. So what do we see from there? Zika in, only if he had a chance to give his argument for innocence, and we heard the argument, right? And then we can say, oh, yes, we know his argument, we record it, remember it, so then we'll include his vote within the tally. But if he did not, lo zika la, if he did not explain his argument for innocence, then we do not count it. And so we can infer from here that if he came and said, I have an argument, but then became a mute, so he never gave his argument. So that means that we don't count it. So that's the answer. But then we reject that answer. Zika peshita li amar tiba elach. No, maybe this baraita that talked about a case of a student who comes and gives the argument and then dies, we count it anyway. It was just talking about the typical case, because usually there's not much time between when the student says, raises his hands and says, I have an argument. Okay, come right up, and he says his argument. So that's the typical case that's giving. It's not talking about a case where he got mute in the middle. So it's talking about a typical case where someone comes and says, I have an argument, he says an argument, and then he dies, or he's not around. So then we count his vote. That we know. We're not asking about that. The question was when he said, I have an argument, and then he became mute or died and didn't get a chance to explain the argument. And this baraita is not talking about that case. You can't infer from this baraita, from the fact that he gave the argument and we count it. That means if he didn't give the argument, he wouldn't count it. The baraita is not talking about that case because it's an unusual case, and therefore we leave this question unsolved. The Mishnah continues and teaches that when we bring out the condemned person to be executed, and then he says, well, before he's killed on the way there, he says, wait, I have an argument for my innocence. We allow that and we bring him back to court even 4 or 5 times, as long as there is substance to his words. If he's just speaking nonsense, then we go ahead and kill him. But he has to say something, has some content, and then we'll bring him back to court and evaluate if it's a good argument or not. We ask, is that true that you have to check if there's substance in his argument even the first and second time? והתניא, פעם ראשונה ושנייה, בין שיש ממש בדבריו, בין שאין ממש בדבריו, מחזירין אותו. מכאן ואילך, אם יש ממש בדבריו, מחזירין אותו. אין ממש בדבריו, אין מחזירין אותו. We have a braita that says the first time and the second time that the criminal says, I have an argument, we bring him back to court immediately. We don't even ask him any questions about what the argument is, whether there's substance to it, what he says. Even if there's no substance, we bring him back immediately. He says, I have an argument, okay, we let him come back. But the third time, fourth time, and after that, we check and say, okay, what are you going to say, right? What do you have to say? We check at the execution point to see if he has anything at all substantive, then we'll bring him back. Otherwise, not. So this is a challenge to the Mishnah, because the Mishnah says that you check for substance every time, even the first two times. It doesn't make a distinction, and the Braita makes a distinction. The first two times we don't check, and only after that we check. Amar Papa Targuma mipam sheniava elach. Now Papa says, the Mishnah, when the Mishnah said we check if there's substance, it was only talking about from after the second time and following. Then you check and to see if he said anything. Minayadena. How are we going to know? Because he's out there, and who's with him? An executioner, I guess a guard. So who's going to check this? We send a pair of rabbis to evaluate the claim. This is not a full court, because we're not deciding whether it's a valid claim or not. We just want to see, is there substance? Does he have anything to say, or is he just making excuses to delay his execution? So the two rabbis are sent out there, and they listen and says, okay, there's some argument that he has to say, some new information here. So then we bring him back. If not, no. So in other words, the first two times, we don't even ask him anything. If he says no, has an argument, we bring him back. But the third time and on, we send these two rabbis, and they check if there's substance, and if there is, we bring him back. If not, we just kill him. Now, why don't we send the pair of rabbis the first time also, and the second time, to check if there's substance? Why not check? Why should we bring him all the way back if he has nothing to say at all? And the answer is, we are afraid that we assume that maybe out of his fright, he's about to be killed, so maybe out of his fright, he won't be able to say everything that's on his mind. So when he's out there, right, we're taking him out, he's like, about to have his head chopped off, and then he says, I have something to say. And the two rabbis say, okay, what do you have to say? He's too fearful over there, out there. So we bring him back, because maybe he really does have a substances argument, but he's too afraid to say it. So we bring him back to the court, and by then, it's a few minutes later, and he's calm, and he's sitting on the bench, and so then he could say in front of the judges that which he wants to say. So we give him one chance. We give him two chances for him to calm down and come and say that. If the first two times he has no substance, then the third time already we can't bring him back forever. Then already at that point we have to send two rabbis to check to see if it's worth bothering to bring him back into the courthouse. All right, next Mishnah, Masulo Zechut Petaruhu. If at that point someone had a reason, someone brought him back or he brought himself back, and they accepted that argument, and they re-voted, and they said he's innocent, so then he is exempt and he leaves. Ve'im lav yaseli sakel. If not, and let's say he's condemned to stoning, then he goes and gets stoned. However, first, vecharoz yosel lefanav ish peloni ben peloni yoseli sakel al shavad avera pelonit ufloni adav kol mi sheyodei lo zechut yavo v'lamed zechut. There is a public crier that goes out in front of him as they're walking to the place, from the courthouse to the place of execution. There's a person that's calling out in a loud voice, this person, so-and-so, the son of so-and-so, is going to be stoned because he did this sin. And this person and that person are his witnesses. If anybody knows anything for innocence, they should come and say so. So you want to announce it so that everybody surrounding can hear about it, and they say, oh, I know that guy. What is he condemned for? No, it can't be. Those witnesses, when did they say that happened? No, it can't be because they were with us, or we know otherwise. He did know. Someone else did that murder. And that way they'll come and be able to save the person. Abaye says that this public crier also has to say it happened on this day, at this time, in this place. Why? Because then someone might hear, oh, those two people are the witnesses? And what day? What day did it happen? At what time? Oh, with those two guys, they were with us in Chicago. They could not have seen this guy violating Shabbat on that day. And so then they'll come. So that he adds that they should say that as well. We now make an inference from the wording of the Mishnah. It says, V'charoz yoseh lefanav. Lefanav in, me'ikara la. The public crier goes out in front of the Convict means in front of him on that very day, at the time that he's walking from the courthouse to the place of execution. So that means, yes, the crier goes out at that point on that day. However, beforehand, he does not. We don't see anywhere in the Mishnah that it says any days beforehand do they make a public announcement about this. But we question this from a baraita. V'hatanya be'erev haPesach tilauhu leYeshu haNosri. But we have a baraita that teaches that Yeshu haNosri, Yeshu is short for Yeshua, which is short for Yehoshua. So his full name was Yehoshua, and just for short they called him Yeshu. Yeshu does not actually originally stand for Yemach Shemo V'Zichro. That's just a later fun play on words. Yeshu was actually quite a common name, so it makes sense that one can say his name, and now here, look, it's printed right here in the Gemara. So Yeshu, who was from the city of Nazareth, so that's why it's called Yeshu HaNotzri, he was hung. Now, in other sources, it says that he was crucified. So to be hung can actually refer to crucifixion, but since over here it's referring to a bet din that's killing him in one of the four ways of bet din, this would be hanging, meaning strangulation with two ropes, which is the way the Mishnah will describe it. Anyway, Yeshu was killed, it says here, on Erev Pesach, which agrees with the Gospel of John that says also it was on Erev Pesach. V'hakaroz yoseh lefanav 40 yom. And there was a public crier 40 days beforehand that was going around and making a public announcement that said, Yeshu haNosri yoseh lisakel al shekishe vehesit v'hidiach et Yisrael. Kol mi sheyodea lo zechut yabo v'lamed alav v'lo masu lo zechut tilauhu be'erev haPesach. This public announcer said, Yeshu haNosri is going to be stoned. Notice he's being stoned. So this hanging means after he's stoned, right? Whenever someone gets capital punishment, let's say by stoning, after he's stoned, then they would hang him up just for a short time. They have to take him down before the sun sets, just as a public display of, look, this guy deserved capital punishment. So that's what the hanging here means. So certainly is not referring in this, according to this baraita, to crucifixion. Okay, so they took him out to be stoned, and the public announcer said, why? What was his crime? That he did magic, sorcery. In fact, there's many stories in the Gospels that say he did all kinds of magic and healing and things like that. And he went and he followed and brought people to idolatry, incited people to follow idolatry. That could be, if you interpret that he said that he is Mashiach, that he is God, things like that. So that can be understood as idolatry. And then they said, anyone who has an argument for innocence, let them come, right? Because that's the standard procedure of Bet Din. But nobody came. There was no argument that they accepted for his innocence, and therefore they killed him and then hung him up on Erev HaPesach. What we see from here is that 40 days before, they already are announcing it. But here in the Mishnah, it just says that day and not beforehand. Okay, before we get to the answer, we have to note a few things about this. This is a very complicated and interesting source. Number one is that you will not find this in a standard editions of the Vilna Shas. From here all the way until the end of the next Baraita, actually all the way until here, is missing, all the way till here actually, till Amud Bet, is missing in the standard Vilna Shas. The reason for that is because of Christian censors that didn't want it there. They went around, and anything that was negative about Christians in the Talmud, they took out. Here we see it actually even in this manuscript. This is Munich 95 manuscript, the only manuscript of the entire Shas. And you can see that originally all this was here, and then someone, this would be a Christian censor, came and to this manuscript and erased parts of it. So it says here, Erev Pesach tilauhu, and then it erases his name. They didn't want anybody to say anything bad about the people that they believed in. And then later on, it erases more, and erases actually the whole paragraph, the next braita, the entire thing. because lots of names, you can't just erase one or two names. So we see that Christian censors were already erasing things. And then later on, printers, even the Jewish printers, would leave these things out because they didn't want Christians to take them and then rip it out or burn them. And so they actually printed it. The Jews themselves would print it without these paragraphs so that the Christians wouldn't come and take and destroy the entire Talmud. But these are, in fact, original and authentic parts of the Gemara. They are, in fact, in all the other manuscripts, and you can see this whole section here, right here, and is the printed editions on top, and Mr. Munich 95 that I just showed. And these are the other manuscripts, including this one, which is a Yemenite manuscript, and it has this section, and it has the entire next section and next Baraita also. So these do belong in the Baraita. These do belong in the Gemara. It's an authentic Baraita, and should be studied. If you're studying Daf Yomi, you shouldn't skip this, even though it happens to not be on the standard printed page. Okay, this source is very interesting to compare to other sources that we have, because what does this mean? That he was the charges here are actually more or less correct, but the fact that he was killed here, it says he was killed by the Sanhedrin. With all the procedures of the Sanhedrin, this is very strange, because from all other sources says that although the Kohen Gadol arrested him and tried him, the Jews did not have authority to kill people. They handed him over to the Romans, and it's the Roman governor Pontius Pilate condemned him to death and killed him in the Roman way. The Roman way of killing people was by crucifixion. And so interestingly, the Gemara has a different version of the history. And what seems to be going on here in the Talmud Bavli, you won't find this in the Talmud Yerushalmi, which is under Roman rule, which is controlled by Christians. So in Yerushalmi, they're a little more careful not to make fun of Christians. But I think the point here is in Talmud Bavli, where they didn't have to worry about that. This version of the history is saying, oh, Yeshu, you know what kind of person he was? He was a sorcerer, an idolater. He led people idolater, and we would be happy to kill him, right? And we were proud of it, because he's not deserving of anything. He was a sinner. He was a criminal, and so the rabbis are in a way happy to take pride in this execution, and so they put him in the Sanhedrin. Okay, a lot more to say about this. Anyway, what's the answer? Amar Ula v'tizbera Yeshu Nosri bar hapuche zechutu. Ula says, wait, does this make sense? That they would send out a public announcer to say, does anybody have anything good to say about Yeshu? Any reason to acquit? Why is he a person that we are looking for mercy on his behalf? Mesitu v'rachamana amar lo tachmor v'lo techaseh. Because he's inciting people to idolatry. We already saw that we quote the pasuk, do not spare, do not conceal him, do not have mercy, right? All the laws that we said that we always tend towards mercy apply to everybody else, but not to an insider. So therefore, we should not try to look for arguments for innocence. So why were they even trying at all? Yeshu is different because he had close ties with the government, and Jews did not want to get in trouble with the Roman government, and therefore they went out of their way to say, does anybody have any reason to show innocence? And nobody did. So then the Jews can go to the Romans and say, listen, we tried to save him. Right? We asked around, but nobody could give an argument for innocence. So you see, we had to execute him. And that's why in this case they sent out the announcer 40 days before. This was an unusual case. One time only, just for Yeshu, because they needed to make sure that everybody knew about it, and there were really no arguments so that they could tell the Romans. But normally, they would only send out a public announcer on that one day. This point of it, which is said by Ula, is also very interesting because in the Christian version, in the Gospels, it also says that the Jews wanted Yeshu to be killed, and Pontius Pilate said, oh, I had a dream about him, he's a good guy, I don't want to kill him. And the Jews said, we'll take responsibility. And so that version, which is not historical, right? We know Pontius Pilate, he was a brutal person. He murdered lots of people. Anyone who would come around and say, hey, I'm king of the Jews, which is an affront to the Romans, because whoever would say that is basically saying, Romans go home, right? I am in charge here. So Pontius Pilate, surely, the historical version, would be happy to kill Jesus. And in fact, he killed many other people just just like him we have from other sources. So it's the Gospels actually tell the story in a different way and say, oh, it's the Jews that wanted to kill Yeshu and the Romans wanted to save him. So interestingly, the Talmud accepts the Christian version of the story, and over here in a way saying, oh, the Romans, yeah, they would save him, but the rabbis, Sanhedrin, they decided that he needed to go, and thereby actually taking pride in taking responsibility in the execution of Yeshu. Okay, a lot of very interesting plays here, and in a way you can see this as the rabbis' parody on the story of the execution of Yeshu. Okay, continuation of this, Tenor Banan. Chamisha tamidim hayu lo liyeshu hanosri. Yeshu had 5 students, Matai, Nakai, Neser, Buni, Vetoda. These are their names. Now, Matai is Matthew, and who he was one of the students. The other names here, not clear who they refer to. Achu le Matai, Amar lehu, Matai hareg, v'aketib, Matai abo ve'era'e pene Elohim. And so these students also were brought to trial, and Matthew said to the judges, shall Matai be executed? And he quotes a pasuk. Remember, these are all Jews, so they know the pasukim well. And he says from Tehillim, Matai, no, in simple reading, it means when can I come and appear before God? But he's making the word Matai refer to himself. Matai will come and appear before God. See, he can't be killed because he has to live and appear before God. So the judges say, all right, we'll play your game. Amru lo in Matai yahareg dichtiv Matai yamut v'avad shemo. In fact, you will die because there's another pasuk that says Matai will die and his name will perish. So there you go. That's a reason to kill him. It wasn't a very good argument to begin with because he mistranslated the word. But even following his logic, there's another pasuk that says the opposite. Achu le nakai amar luhu nakai yehareg v'ketiv v'naki v'sadik al taharog. So then they brought the other student Nakai and says, what? Are you going to really kill Nakai? But the pasuk says Naki, a play on Nakai, a innocent and righteous person you shall not kill. Amru lo in Nakai yehareg dichtib b'mistarim yaharog Naki. Yes, because there's another pasuk that says in secret place he kills the innocent, but we're reading it as he kills Naki or Nakai. So therefore, yes, you have to be killed. They brought Neser. It seems that these names are purposely chosen because you can make a play on words on them. That pasuk in Yeshua, a branch shall grow out of his roots. So, meaning Netzer is going to grow. He's going to live. Amru lo in Netzer yihareg dichtiv v'ata hoshlachta mikibrecha keneser nit'av. Another pasuk in Yeshua is you are cast out of your grave like a abhorred branch. But that's Netzer. So meaning that yes, you will die and be cast out of your grave. Meaning like Netzer. Achu lebuni amar buni. They brought Buni. It says, are you going to kill Buni? But it says Beni, my firstborn son is Israel. So that means Buni is Hashem's firstborn. I'm special. You can't kill me. Yes, you will be killed because it says regarding Paro, I will kill your firstborn, meaning, and you could read it, I will kill Buni, your firstborn. Achu le toda amar toda yehareg v'aketib bizmor le toda. Amru lo in toda yehareg dichtib zobech toda yechabedani. And so the last person's name was Toda. He says, you're going to kill Toda. Says, praise to Toda. So you have to praise me, not kill me. And they said, indeed, we will kill you because it says, whoever slaughters Toda, and Peshat is talking about a korban Toda, someone who slaughters a korban Toda gives honor. But here it means whoever slaughters the student of Yeshu who named Toda, that's an honor to Hashem. And therefore come over here so we can kill you. All right, fantastic. Baraita, again, you see that the rabbis here in Talmud Bavli feel free because they're not going to be persecuted by Christians. And so they are making fun of the Christians and their knowledge of Pisukim and plays on words and so on. Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, kol hazobech et yisro mitvadeh alav, ma'aleh alav וכתוב כאילו כיבדו לקדוש ברוך הוא בשני עולמים, העולם הזה והעולם הבא, דכתיב, זובח תודה יכבדנני. Since we quoted this pasuk from Tehillim, we quoted again for another different derasha. And Yosef ben Levi says, anyone who slaughters his Yetzer Hara and admits his sins, the pasuk considers it as if he honored HaKadosh Baruch Hu in two worlds, in this world and in the next world. As it says, Zoveach. Zoveach is referring to slaughtering the Yetzer Hara. Todah is modeh, is vidui, is confessing sins. And Yechabedanini has two nuns, so it's a doubled word, to mean that one gives honor and will be honored in this world and in the next world. Ve'amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, the same sage teaches something else. Bisman shebet hamikdash kaim adam makriv olah, sechad olah biyado mincha, sechad mincha biyado, aval mi sheda'ato shefala, ma'aleh alav hakatuv kilu ikriv kol hakorbanot kulan. When the Bet HaMikdash was standing, if someone brings a korban olah, so he gets the merit of bringing a burnt offering. If he brings a korban mincha, flour offering, he gets the benefit of a flour offering. However, someone who is humble in spirit, the pasuk says about him, it's as if he gets the merit of sacrificing every type of korban. We know this from pasuk in Tehillim that says, "Shneimar zivche Elohim ruach nishbara velo od ela shen tefilato nim'eset shneimar leb nishba v'nidke Elohim lo tibzeh." That the offering of God to God is a broken spirit. Right? Broken spirit is zivche. It says it in plural. So all the zivachim, broken spirit, that's that emotion of humility is worth as much as all of the sacrifices. And not only that, but his prayer will not be rejected, as it says in the continuation of the pasuk, a broken and contrite heart God will not despise. Okay, beautiful derashot. Next Mishnah. Now as they're walking, when they are far from the place of execution, about 10 amot away, then the people accompanying the convict tell him that he should confess. So you see, this goes right from confession. We just talked about confession in Modeh, and so that links right into this next Mishnah. Sheken derech kol hamumatin mitvadin, and we tell him because this is the way of anyone who is about to be executed should confess. In fact, anybody on their deathbed, they should confess their sins before they die, make atonement, make teshubah. And in fact, death itself is a form of atonement. So you're being killed anyway for this capital punishment for whatever you did. So confess. That way you will attain the world to come. Although you're a criminal in this world and you deserve capital punishment, if you confess your sin, then, although you lost this world, you can gain the next. We find exactly this lesson regarding Achan. After Bnei Israel conquered Yericho, Yeshua said, whoever takes no one's allowed to take from the spoils, they are consecrated, cherem, and no one's allowed to take from it. And then Achan went and he took gold and silver from the spoils of Yericho. Then they went to the Ai and they lost the war at first at the Ai. And Yoshua prayed to Hashem and says, why did we lose? What happened? And Hashem said, you violated the cherem, and they made a lottery. And they found that it was Achan that did that. And then Yoshua tells Achan, yes, I know it's you. And so he says, my son, please give honor to Hashem and confess your sin. Why is it so important to confess? Well, it gives honor to Hashem, meaning that then we'll know that you really did it. And we know anyway, but by confessing, then we'll know that the lottery was not random, that it was exactly you, and then we'll know why we lost the previous war. And here it's like Yeshua is standing in like a bet din. And so anytime a bet din goes and gives a guilty verdict to someone, and the person denies it, so then it kind of looks bad to the bet din. And so it gives honor to the bet din to say, listen, now we're about to kill you. There's another few steps and you're going to be executed. So give honor to Hashem, give honor to the bet din, to the process that brought you here, and confess. That's at least the least best last thing that you can do, the least that you can do, and your last breath is to confess. It's also good for you, because then you can go to Olam Haba. Vayan Achan et Yoshua vayomar, Omna, Anochi chatati v'chazot v'gomer. And Achan did confess to Yoshua. He says, indeed, I sinned, and this is what I've done, and he explains exactly what he did. U'minayin shekiper lo viduyo shenemar vayomer Yoshua me'achartanu ya'korcha Hashem bayom hazeh ta'achur v'yah ta'achur l'olam haba. And how do we know that his sin was atoned for by confession and the death penalty that he was about to get? He got stoned, Achan. As it says, Yoshua says, look, why have you brought trouble upon us today? Hashem shall trouble you on this day. And we make a diuk. On this day you are troubled, but after that you will go to Olam Haba. So only today, yes, you're going to get, even though he confessed, you're still going to get the death penalty, and that'll be your trouble, that'll be your punishment today only. But after that, because you confessed, you can go to the world to come. And so we learn from here that we tell every convict, listen, you should confess. Now, if the condemned person is a simple person and doesn't know how to make a whole confession, like Achan did, Achan said, I did this and I did that. If he doesn't know how to do all that, we say, let my death be atonement for all of my sins. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Ima yodea shu mezumam Omer, temitati kapara al kol avonotai, chutz me'avon zeh. Rabbi Yehuda says, if the convict knows that he was not guilty and the witnesses that came and spoke against him are really edim zomamin, I mean, no one came and said, you were with us, so the trial went through, but he is sure and he knows about himself, and therefore he doesn't want to confess. See if he's guilty and he knows he's guilty, then he'll say, okay, listen, I lost the trial. I am in fact guilty. So he should confess. And that way, it's good for the Beit Din. It will confirm that what they said is true, and it'll be good for him because now he can be atoned for. But if he really knows he's not guilty, then he doesn't want to confess. He shouldn't have to confess. But let's say he wants his death to be a confession. His death should be an atonement for all of his other sins that he made throughout his life. So Rabbi Yehuda says, okay, we tell him, listen, you can say this formula: let my death be an atonement for all my sins except for this one. This one I didn't do. And so I'm not making a confession about this one. Okay, so Rabbi Yehuda says, yes, he can say that. But the rabbis say, no, we should not tell the convict to say that, because then everybody's going to say that to clear himself, at least in the public eye. Look, he's going out to die, and he says, oh, well, I'm going to die. Let it be an atonement for all my sins, but not this one. And keeps insisting that not this one. We shouldn't prompt the convict to say that. So if he says it by himself, okay, he says it. We nothing we could do about that. But if he doesn't know this formula, then we should just tell him, listen, say this death is a atonement for all of my sins, and that will include the sin that he is being tried for. Okay, the Gemara says, Yoshua tells Achan, please make confession. Why is he saying please? As if Achan's doing him a favor. An unbelievable midrash filling in the conversation, because Yoshua praised Hashem and says, why'd we lose? So when HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Yoshua, Chata Yisrael, Israel has sinned, and then Yoshua says, Ribono shel olam, who did it? Not everybody did it, right? There's only a few people did it. If everybody did it, he would have seen everybody taking spoils. So I says, Hashem, tell me who's guilty. And Hashem says, what, am I a tattletale? Am I an informer? You think, is that my job? In other words, well, Hashem knows everything, but he's not going to tattletale on someone. This is a very important thing. In order for someone to be convicted of a crime, you have to go through the regular procedure. It's kind of impossible to have a society with an all-knowing being, right? Because then it's not going through the regular process of the legal structure of having witnesses or something like that to bring the person. So Hashem says, no, I'm not getting involved. You have to follow a human procedure in order to convict him in court legally. Lechapel goralot. Now, there were no witnesses to this, so Hashem says, go and make a lottery. Halach ve'pil goralot, that's what it says in the pasuk, v'nafal goral al Achan. So they do a lottery, and they pick the tribe and the family, and then they find it's Achan. So then Yehoshua comes to Achan and says, okay, we found it's you. And then Achan responds with a good response. He says, you're accusing me based on a lottery? He says, let's say I take you, Yehoshua, and Elazar Kohen, the two greatest men of the generation. If I make a lottery, I'll put both of your names, Yoshua and Elazar, in a hat, and I'll pick one. One of you is going to win the lottery. So if I say, who's guilty, right? One of you, I'm going to pick someone. A lottery is necessarily going to pick someone. Who said it's me? This is just totally random that you found me. This is no way to make a legal system. Indeed, he has a point. We don't generally make a legal system and find someone guilty based on a lottery. Rambam, in his commentary in the Mishnah, in fact, says this was an unusual, a one time only, an exceptional time. Normally we would never do this, but just because this was an emergency, they lost the war, so they had to resort to a lottery, and so they did that. But Achan is making a good point. Yeshua says, please, this explains the word na. Yeshua recognizes that Achan has a good point, and the lottery can be understood to be random and invalid. But Yeshua says, please do not say slander about lotteries and say that this lottery doesn't matter. In fact, because the land of Israel will be divided by a lottery. As it says, nevertheless, the land shall be divided by a lottery. And therefore, that lottery is going to be divinely assisted. The lottery can be random, but a lottery in lots of places, like the lottery on Yom Kippur, is a way of divination, a way of figuring out what is Hashem's will. And so please don't say anything bad about this lottery, because then that will undermine the lottery of the settling of the land of Israel. And if you care about the settling of the land of Israel, then, please don't undermine this lottery, and instead confess. Ten todah, confess. Amar Rabina, shachode, shechade b'mileh. Kulum nebakesh mecha ela hoda'ah, ten lo hoda'ah v'hipater. And so the Midrash continues and says, Yeshua told Achan, Ravina explains, that Yeshua bribed him with words. He told him something that wasn't 100% accurate. He said, what am I asking from you? Only to confess, and then you can be pater, you're exempt, you can be discharged, even though it actually wasn't true, because after he confessed, they killed him. So miyad vayan Achan et Yehoshua, Vayomar omna anochi chatati laHashem Elokei Yisrael v'kazot v'kazot asiti. So immediately he gave a confession. Now Yeshua wasn't totally lying. What he meant is, confess now, and then after we kill you, you will be patur, you'll be atoned, and you can go to Olam Haba. That's what he meant. But he didn't explain the whole thing. So Achan thought that he meant if he confesses, then he won't be killed at all. That's why he agreed to confess. Okay, so Yeshua used a little bit of a sleight of hand in order to get Achan to confess. Amar Rav Asi, Amar Rabbi Chanina, melamed shema'al Achan b'shlosha charamim, shenayim b'imei Moshe v'echad b'imei Yehoshua, shenemar kazot v'chazot asiti. Now, he answers, says, I sinned to Hashem, and he says, kazot v'kazot. So, Rabbi Chanina says, this teaches that this is not the first time Achan did something like this. He violated 3 charamim, 2 in the time of Moshe, in other wars that they had, and then once in Yehoshua against Yericho, shenemar kazot v'chazot asiti. Rabbi Yochanan mishum Rabbi Elazar b'Rabbi Shimon, 5, 4 בימי משה ו1 בימי יהושע, שנאמר אנוכי חטאתי וחזות עשיתי. And Rabbi Yochanan says, in fact, he violated 5 times altogether. 4 times in the time of Moshe, and once in the time of Yehoshua, because it says, I sinned, that's the time of Yehoshua, and then from the Vav of Vechazot. So that's 2, and the Vav and Kazot is another 2. So in fact, 4 times in the time of Moshe. So it's not the first time. You see, he was really guilty, and now that he confessed also for all those past sins as well. Now, if he had sinned so many times, even back in the time of Yehoshua, why was he not punished until now? Amar Rabbi Yochanan mishum Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon lefi shelo anash ala nistarot ad shabru Yisrael et hayarden. And so Rabbi Yochanan says name Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon because punishment was not given for hidden sins until they came in. Bnei Israel crossed the Jordan. The idea is that hidden sins, that's one would get punished from the principle of Kol Yisrael Arevim Ze Bazeh. Even if an individual makes a sin, okay, but everybody is a guarantor for each other. So as a collective, punishment can happen within the land of Israel. But that's only the land of Israel when we are a collective. When we are a nation in borders, then if someone does something wrong, then there's going to be punishment and everybody's going to be responsible. Like if everybody's on a boat and one person makes a hole in the bottom of the boat, we don't say, oh, well, it's his problem. No, it's everybody's problem. That's in the land of Israel. But before they come into the land of Israel, they're not yet fully a nation because they don't have borders. And therefore, outside the land of Israel, the Bnei Israel will be punished for open things, the public sins, like the wood gatherer, but for private sins, that principle of responsibility for each other for private things did not yet kick in before they came into the land. And now we learn that this subject of when Bnei Israel were responsible for each other, even for hidden sins, is a subject of a machloket between two Tanaim, Ketana'eh. Hanistarot ladonai Elohenu v'haniglot lanu ulbanenu ad olam lama nakud al lanu ulbanenu ve'al ayin shebe'ad. A pasuk near the end of Devarim says that hidden matters belong to Hashem. Revealed matters are for us and our children forever. A simple reading of this pasuk, although it's nothing simple about it, what it's referring to, what are the hidden matters, what are the revealed matters? Okay, the way we're going to explain it now is that hidden matters refers to individual sins that are private, that nobody knows about. Revealed matters are public sins, that someone does, and in public that we know about it, so we can intervene and do something about it. And it's making a distinction that hidden sins, that Hashem will punish that individual person. That's between a man and his own creator. But other people are not responsible. How could we be responsible? We didn't even know he did the sin. Whereas revealed sins, public sins, that we have to take care of now and forever. We have to bring the person to court. We have to judge them. We have to rebuke them, and so on. Okay, that's a simple reading. Now the issue is that if you look in a Sefer Torah, the words lanu, ulbanenu, and the ayin on the word ad have dots on top. Dots on top are a scribal convention that says one should erase those words. In lots of ancient manuscripts, they didn't have whiteout and they don't want to cross it out and make a big blotch. So if the scribe made a mistake and wrote a word that doesn't belong there, they put dots on top. Now here, obviously, it doesn't mean that we should actually erase the word. It means that there's something suspicious about this, and it somehow lessens the impact of these words. Similar to the way it says that Esav kissed Yaakov, and this is dots on the letters. Oh, it wasn't a sincere kiss. Maybe it was even a bite. So there's something, maybe it means the opposite of what you think it means, or that you should read it as if it's not there, something like that. So now, why are the dots not there? It's not really clear. So there's two opinions. The first one, Melamed shelo anash ala nistarot ad shabru Yisrael et hayarden divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says this teaches that Hashem did not punish Bnei Israel regarding the secret sins until they crossed the Jordan. That's the opinion that we just said before, which makes sense. That's why Achan was not punished when he stole during Moshe's time outside the land, but only when he went in. It was all private. Nobody knew about any of these things that he stole from Cherem, and that explains that. And so the dots are on top of the letters to teach that before they went into the land, there was a distinction between them. Nistarot Hashem Elokeinu. Nistarot is only for God. So without the dots, the simple reading of the pasuk is referring to outside the land when Moshe said it. But once you get into the land, so if you erase these words, then it puts nistarot and niglot all in the same group. Hanistarot Hashem Elokeinu vehaniglot. Something ad olam. Yeah, it's hard to read without the ayin, but read the dalid. So, however, something about that lasot is called dibirat Torah zot. So, putting it all together. Okay, the reading of the Biudah, erasing these words is not quite as clear. You could look at this note and that Rashi to try to explain it better. But anyway, Amale Rabbi Nechemia responds to Rabbi Yehuda, and he says, "V'chi anash alin nistarot le'olam, v'halo kevar ne'emad ad olam." He says, "Will Hashem punish the whole nation for hidden sins ever?" After all, it says forever. In other words, he's reading the words ad olam as referring to everything in the beginning of the pasuk, including the beginning that says hidden things only Hashem will punish, meaning only individually, and that is true forever, both inside the land of Israel and outside the land of Israel. There is no distinction. So he disagrees with Rabbi Yehuda's interpretation that says, Anistarot, Hashem will punish individual sins only outside the land of Israel, but inside the land of Israel, it's everybody's responsibility. No, not so. Hashem only will take care of individual sins privately, and that will be forever. So now, how do we read the dots? Ela, keshem shelo anash al anistarot, kach lo anash al onashin shebagalui, ad shabru Yisrael et hayarden. So we're going to read, when they were outside the land of Israel, we're going to read it with the dots and say, Hanistarot Hashem Elokeinu vehaniglot. When they're outside the land of Israel, then both the hidden and the revealed sins, Hashem takes care of individually and not on a collective basis. And once they come into the land of Israel, then remove the dots and read the pasuk as is. And then there's a distinction. In the land of Israel, hidden sins, Hashem will take care of individually, but revealed sins that one can know about, that we have to take care of. You can't see people that are committing crimes and doing terrible things and just say, well, it's not my problem. If you know about it, then you have to do something about it. So niglot, lanu ul banenu, we read the entire word, ad olam, right? That will be true ever after. So according to that, how will we explain the question? Why was Achan not punished? Why was Achan punished even in the land of Israel, since this was a private sin? And according to the Nehemiah, hidden sins are never punished. One does not punish the whole community because of a hidden sin. So here, the whole community, all Bnei Israel, lost the war against the eye because of the private hidden sin of one person, Achan. Why should everybody get punished because of the sin of one person, according to Rabbi Nechemia, even in the land of Israel? Why was Achan punished? Because it wasn't totally private. His wife and his children knew about it. They saw all this gold and silver that he brought from the cherem of Yericho, and they didn't say anything about it. So it was possible they should have said something about it. Instead, they were quiet to say, oh, we'll benefit from this too. So this was not a private sin. That's already called public. If there's someone who didn't commit the sin that knows about it, it's their responsibility to come and tell Yeshua, hey, someone violated it, because they didn't. So in fact, this was a public sin, and they're already in the land of Israel. And so for a public sin in the land of Israel, the collective is responsible. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.